The scrapyard hung on the edge of a dying moon, a place where forgotten machines and broken starships rotted under a gray sky. Few humans visited it and even fewer dragons cared to. But Aaron Vox did. Every morning he climbed over rusted hulls, ducked under half-collapsed walkways and began his work without complaint. He was a human mechanic who thrived in shadows, fixing things no one else dared touch. His hands were calloused, his eyes sharp and his mind sharper. He did not work for glory or money. He worked because things needed fixing and he was the only one who could. Aaron's latest project was an old scout vessel from the Dragon Wars, a ship that had been abandoned for decades. Its engines had been torn apart, wires chewed through and armor scorched by fire. Most people would have walked away, but Aaron saw possibility. He worked in silence, using tools scavenged from other broken machines. Sparks flew in quiet arcs as he reconnected circuits, welded cracked panels, and replaced systems that were long gone. Each repair was precise, almost like a ritual. He hummed softly to himself, a tune no one would recognize, as if the sound kept the shadows at bay. From above, a shadow flickered across the scrapyard. Aaron didn't look up. Visitors were rare, and he had learned that most came for trouble or rumors. Today it seemed he was alone. Yet the feeling of being watched crept over him. He ignored it, focusing instead on a sealed vault embedded in the hull of the scout ship. It had a strange energy that called to him. No one had dared touch it for centuries, not even during the height of the war. Some said it belonged to a dragon warrior whose name was now legend. Others whispered that the vault contained a weapon of impossible power. Aaron did not believe in legends. He only believed in machines and what he could do with them. He ran his fingers over the vault's surface, feeling the faint vibration of hidden circuits beneath. His eyes narrowed. The mechanism was complex, unlike anything he had worked on before. It responded only to gentle pressure, precise angles, and subtle sequences. A wrong move could lock it forever or trigger unknown traps. Aaron did not flinch. He worked slowly, carefully, his mind tracking each connection, each piece of code embedded in the old machine. Sparks kissed the metal as he aligned the final piece. A soft click echoed through the empty scrapyard. The vault was responding. For a moment nothing happened. Aaron stepped back, wiped sweat from his brow, and studied the vault. It seemed dormant again, but the faint hum persisted. Then a light glimmered from the edges of the panel. Aaron's heart quickened, not from fear but from curiosity. The vault had been waiting, maybe for centuries, and now it acknowledged him. He pressed a sequence of buttons, turned a series of levers, and the panel slid open with a hiss. Inside lay a sword, its surface black as night but etched with glowing lines that pulsed like a heartbeat. It was beautiful, terrifying, and alive in a way that no machine should be. Aaron reached out, careful not to touch the edge. The sword responded to his presence, not in words, but in a quiet vibration that tickled his palm. He had repaired many things, but nothing like this. Something deep inside him told him that this sword had a story, a past full of battles, honor, and pain. Yet it did not demand him, it only waited. Aaron's fingers lingered, and he knew this was a moment that would change more than the scrapyard. Perhaps it would change him too. Footsteps echoed behind him. Aaron spun, tools still in hand. A figure approached, tall, armored, and imposing. A dragon veteran, unmistakable even beneath the cloak of dust and ash. The visitor's eyes glimmered with a mixture of suspicion and recognition. He did not speak immediately. He only looked at the sword, then at Aaron. The air grew tense, as though the scrapyard itself was holding its breath. Aaron did not move. He was used to people fearing him, underestimating him, or both. But this was different. This dragon had fought in wars Aaron had only read about in fragments. And now he stood here, searching for something lost long ago. "I thought it was gone," the dragon said at last, his voice rough like metal scraping on stone. "I thought I destroyed it." Aaron tilted his head, curious. "Destroy what?" he asked simply. He did not feel fear, only the steady focus of a mechanic who understood that some things had to be handled with care. The dragon's eyes narrowed. "The sword. My sword. The one I abandoned. The one I failed to claim." His gaze shifted to Aaron, suspicion and awe mixing in an impossible way. How did you find it?" Aaron shrugged. "I fix what is broken. Sometimes the rest finds me." He held the sword lightly, feeling its hum ripple through his fingertips. The dragon stared, then took a cautious step closer. For a moment, there was silence, heavy with unspoken history. A sudden screech split the air. Aaron and the dragon both turned. A scouting drone, long inactive, had activated and was circling above, its sensors scanning for intruders. Aaron's heart did not race. He had faced worse without leaving his tools. With calm precision he activated the ship's defenses, rerouted power, and shut down the drone before it could sound an alarm. Sparks flew, wires burned, but nothing was broken beyond repair. The dragon watched in disbelief. He had fought humans who ran, who panicked. This one stayed calm. This one controlled everything, even from the shadows. When the drone finally fell silent, the dragon exhaled. "You are no ordinary human," he said. "I underestimated you." Arin only smiled faintly. "Most do," he replied. "I prefer it that way." The dragon studied him a moment longer, then nodded slowly. "Perhaps. I have been looking for the sword in all the wrong places. Perhaps it found the right hands instead." He reached out, hesitant, as if acknowledging both Arin and the sword's quiet power. The scrapyard seemed to lean in closer, shadows thickening as if approving the moment. Arin lowered the sword. "It is just a machine," he said softly. "It works if you know how to handle it." The dragon's lips twitched in what could almost be called a smile. "Then perhaps we will see if I can handle it now." For the first time in decades, a legend looked at a human not as a tool, not as prey, but as an equal. Arin, the mechanic who no one watched, had become the keeper of a secret stronger than fear, stronger than war itself. And in the shadows of the scrapyard, a quiet human prepared to see what legends and machines could do together. Kraith Valorian had not expected to return to the outskirts of human space. His wings, once strong and proud, were scarred and battered. His armor was chipped, and the golden emblem of his clan had faded with years of regret. He had walked through war, betrayal, and loss, and now he carried only memories heavier than any sword. He was a dragon veteran, one who had once commanded fleets and wielded fire that could burn entire planets. Yet now he walked alone, broken in spirit and haunted by the weight of failure. He came to the scrapyard not for treasure, not for revenge, but for a name whispered in the ruins of the galaxy. The sword he had abandoned long ago had never left his thoughts. It was more than a weapon, it was a symbol of honor he had failed to claim. Every night, he had dreamed of it, and every morning, he had woken knowing it was lost. But a signal, faint and almost imperceptible, had guided him here, to this forgotten place where humans lived in shadows, fixing what others left to die. The scrapyard smelled of oil, rust, and decay. Ships leaned against each other, twisted by years of neglect. Kraith's sharp eyes scanned every corner, every shadow. Most humans would have fled at the sight of him, but here, he noticed one figure moving with purpose. A man, human, small in stature but precise in every motion, worked with a calm focus that intrigued the veteran. Sparks flew around him, yet he did not flinch. Every movement was deliberate, every action measured. Kraith felt an unexpected pang of respect. Few could survive this place, and even fewer could dominate it without brute strength. As Kraith approached, the human glanced up briefly, but his eyes remained steady. "You're not from around here," Arin said simply. His voice carried no fear, no surprise, only the calm of someone used to working with dangerous machines. Kraith was taken aback. He had faced dragons, mercenaries, and warlords, and yet this human treated him as if he were another machine to observe, not a threat to destroy. "I am looking for something," Kraith said, his voice low and even. "A sword I lost, a sword I never claimed." He watched Arin carefully, gauging his reaction. Most humans would tremble, would ask for mercy, would run. Not this one. He seemed unshakable. Arin tilted his head, studying him. "Lost swords are found in strange places," he replied. He went back to his work, adjusting circuits on a device Kraith did not recognize. Sparks flew again, and the sword, resting nearby in its glowing panel, seemed to hum with anticipation. Kraith's heart quickened. Could it be? Could this be the place? He stepped closer. "Do you know of it?" he asked, trying to hide hope beneath a mask of caution. Arin glanced at the sword, then at him, and shook his head slightly. "I repair what is broken," he said. "I do not chase legends." Yet the faint hum of the sword grew stronger, as if responding to Kraith's presence, recognizing the touch of the one who had once wielded it. For a moment, Kraith simply looked. The human mechanic, small and unassuming, held more command over the room than Kraith had expected. He realized with a bitter twist that he had underestimated the quiet strength of humans. They were not dragons, they did not rely on fire or claws. But they survived always, they repaired always, and sometimes they held the key to things even dragons could not claim. Kraith took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his past pressing down. Memories of failed battles, of comrades lost, of pride turned to ash, flooded his mind. He had chosen retreat over glory, survival over honor. The galaxy remembered his failure and so did he. And yet, here he was, drawn by a force he could not explain, to a human who might hold the answer to redemption he thought impossible. A sudden clatter interrupted his thoughts. Aaron had activated a mechanism inside the ship, causing a section of the floor to rise and reveal hidden wiring. Kraith watched closely, fascinated. He had fought wars, yes, but he had never understood the patience it took to repair, to build, to fix without recognition. The human moved with the kind of precision that made the veteran uneasy. Here, strength was not measured by fire or teeth, but by control and understanding. "Why do you help things no one cares about?" Kraith asked quietly. He stepped closer, careful not to touch anything. Aaron did not answer immediately. He adjusted a wire, tapped a panel and finally spoke. "Because no one else will. If I do not, nothing works. If nothing works, then everything falls apart." His gaze met Kraith's. "Even for people like you." Kraith paused. He had expected fear, confusion, maybe defiance. Instead, he saw calm, certainty, and something he had never understood fully: human resilience. This small figure, standing among scraps of war, represented a strength that could not be burned or clawed away. Kraith felt a flicker of hope, strange and unwelcome, creeping into his heart. Then he saw it. The sword's faint glow pulsed faster, reacting to his presence. His fingers itched to hold it, to feel the balance of its weight, to reclaim what he had abandoned. Yet Aaron did not move. He only observed, guiding the energy of the machine with his hands, his mind, his skill. Kraith realized the truth: the sword did not belong to him alone. It had waited, and it recognized him now, but only because someone else had kept it safe, repaired it, and prepared it for the right moment. The veteran stepped forward slowly, reverence mixed with caution. "I thought it was gone forever," he said, voice trembling slightly. "I thought I had failed completely." Aaron looked at him, hands resting on the glowing sword. "Failure is just the moment before repair," he said. "Sometimes you do not know it, but someone has already fixed the pieces you left behind." Kraith's gaze dropped to the sword. He could feel its weight even from a distance. It was alive in a way no weapon should be. For the first time in years, he felt the possibility of redemption. Not through fire or battle, but through patience, care, and the quiet strength of a human who had worked in shadows all his life. A sudden alarm shattered the quiet. A drone, likely scavengers or watchers, activated above the scrapyard. Kraith tensed, ready to fight, but Aaron only moved calmly, rerouting power, shutting down the systems with precise movements. Sparks flew, circuits hissed, but nothing broke beyond repair. Kraith watched in awe. This human did not need to fight to win. His mind, his hands, and his patience were more powerful than brute strength. When the alarm finally fell silent, Kraith exhaled, feeling an unfamiliar weight lift. He looked at Aaron and said softly, "You are stronger than you appear." Aaron smiled faintly, a simple human gesture, and returned to his work. Kraith realized then that the journey ahead would not be easy, but perhaps, just perhaps, it would be possible. The sword, the human, and the veteran, all of them together, would face what the galaxy had left behind. And for the first time in a long time, Kraith felt that redemption was within reach. The sword lay in its panel, humming softly, a quiet heartbeat in the dim scrapyard. Aaron Vox watched it carefully, hands steady, eyes alert. The dragon veteran, Kraith Valerian, stood a few feet away, tense but silent. The air between them was thick with anticipation, as if the universe itself waited to see what would happen next. The sword was no ordinary weapon. Aaron had felt its energy pulse through the ship's systems, alive yet patient, waiting for the right moment and the right hands. Kraith's eyes never left it. "I can feel it, even from here," he said quietly. "It is more than metal. It is alive." His voice held a mixture of awe and fear. Aaron nodded slowly. "It responds to more than strength. It responds to care, to understanding. You cannot claim it with power alone." The veteran frowned, trying to grasp what the human meant. In battle he had relied on fire, claws, and sheer will. Now he was being told that the sword, the weapon that could have defined his life, answered to something entirely different. It was frustrating, humbling, and unfamiliar. Aaron reached toward the sword, not to grab it, but to guide it. Sparks of light traveled along the etched lines on the blade as his fingers hovered near the hilt. The sword pulsed faster, sensing his touch, recognizing the patience and skill it had seen in him over hours of careful repair. "It will wake," Aaron said softly, "but only if you are ready to face what it shows you. Not as a weapon but as a test." Kraith stepped closer, cautious, unsure if he should intervene. The sword's glow brightened when his shadow fell across it, yet it did not move toward him. It waited. The veteran realized then that it had never rejected him during the war. He had abandoned it, left it behind, but it had been waiting all this time, for the right moment, for the right connection. Aaron looked up at him. The sword is not yours yet. It waits for choice. It chooses who will wield it wisely. You must show it you have changed, that your intent is not pride or vengeance, but something greater. Kraith swallowed hard, thinking of his past failures, the lives lost under his command, the fire he had wielded recklessly. Could he prove that he had changed? Could he show patience, care, and understanding instead of hunger for power? The lights of the scrapyard dimmed as a low hum rose from the ship's systems. Aaron had rerouted power to the vault, focusing the energy into the sword's core. The blade pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat, and then with a sudden spark, it began to glow more intensely. Kraith stepped back instinctively, the bright light reflecting off his scarred armor. He felt its presence not just in the air, but in his chest, as if it could see his intentions and read his history. You feel that? Aaron asked. It is testing you. Kraith clenched his fists, unsure if he could pass. He thought of the wars, the victories and failures, the people he had failed to protect. I do not know if I can, he admitted. Aaron shook his head. You do not need to know. You only need to choose to try, to show that you are not the same dragon who abandoned everything. Kraith took a deep breath. The sword's light pulsed faster, reacting to his hesitation. He reached out slowly, letting his fingers hover above the hilt without touching it. The sword flared briefly, then calmed, sensing the sincerity in his caution. He lowered his claws, opened his mind, and allowed himself to feel the patience and skill of the human beside him. Aaron guided him gently, showing how the energy flowed, how the sword responded to presence, not force. Kraith followed, mimicking the movements, learning the rhythm. Sparks danced along the floor, lighting the scrapyard in pale, shifting colors. Slowly, the sword lifted slightly, as if acknowledging that the dragon's heart was ready. Kraith's eyes widened in wonder. He had never felt a weapon move with him before. It was as if it recognized his intent, not his strength. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the outer yard. A scavenger ship had entered, its sensors detecting the sword's energy. Aaron's hand shot out, pressing a control panel, and systems roared to life, locking doors and activating shields. The sword pulsed brighter, responding to the tension in the air. Kraith felt a strange calm settle over him. He realized that the sword's awakening was not just about him, but about survival, about protecting what mattered. The scavengers tried to force their way inside, but Aaron's quick repairs and guidance kept the vault secure. Kraith stood by, ready to defend, yet he felt the sword's energy flowing through him, steadying his mind, teaching him control rather than aggression. He understood then that true strength was not fire and fury, but patience, restraint, and understanding. When the threat passed, the sword glowed steadily, no longer flickering or hesitant. Kraith reached out again, this time letting his claws wrap around the hilt. The moment he touched it fully, a wave of energy ran up his arm and through his body. He did not feel power or dominance, he felt connection. The sword had awakened because it recognized change, responsibility, and the quiet strength of a human who had prepared it for this moment. Kraith looked at Aaron. I feel it. Alive but not dangerous. It trusts me now. Aaron nodded, a faint smile on his face. It always waits for the right moment. For the right hands. Not everyone deserves it, not everyone can handle it. You've been tested, dragon, and you passed. Kraith held the sword carefully, not as a weapon but as a partner. For the first time in decades he felt hope instead of regret. The veteran had returned broken, haunted by failures, but the sword's awakening showed him that redemption was possible. Not through conquest, not through fire, but through patience, skill, and trust. Aaron stepped back, letting Kraith take the lead. Now it begins, he said simply. Not the war but the journey. The sword will teach you more than I can. And together we can face whatever comes next. Kraith nodded, understanding the truth of the human's words. Strength came in many forms, and sometimes it came from those who worked quietly in the shadows, unseen by the world. The sword pulsed steadily in his hands, a living heartbeat in the quiet scrapyard. And in that moment, the human mechanic and the dragon veteran stood together, ready to face what the galaxy had left behind, stronger for the lessons learned in patience, trust, and quiet strength. The scrapyard no longer felt empty. Sparks from Aaron's tools danced across the walls, casting long shadows that swayed with every movement. Kraith Valerian stood nearby, the sword in his hands glowing softly, a reminder of patience, change, and trust. Yet the calm did not last. From the distance came the roar of engines and the clatter of metal, Raiders, scavengers, and old enemies who thought the scrapyard was easy prey. They had no idea who waited inside, or what force had begun to stir within the shadows. Arin did not panic. He had seen worse than scavengers. Broken ships could fall on him, circuits could overload, sparks could ignite fires, but he worked steadily, repairing, rerouting, and reinforcing. The vault that held the sword was the center of the scrapyard, and he fortified it with careful precision. Power flowed through the walls, lights flickered to life, and traps long dormant hummed beneath the floor. Each movement was deliberate, unseen by anyone outside, yet capable of turning the tide. Kraith watched, fascinated. He had fought in wars with dragons and humans alike, but he had never seen strength like this, quiet, patient, uncelebrated, yet absolute. The first wave of attackers arrived, clanging through rusted gates and shouting over the wind. Kraith tightened his grip on the sword, ready to fight, but Arin stepped forward calmly. He did not lift a weapon, did not roar or strike. He pressed buttons, pulled levers, and activated systems hidden for decades. A damaged railgun mounted in the scrapyard's wall hummed to life, sending a controlled shockwave across the path of the invaders. Sparks flew, metal bent, and the raiders stumbled, unsure where the attack came from. Kraith could hardly believe it. He had expected to defend them with brute force, yet the human mechanic handled it all without ever raising a claw. "They underestimated you," Kraith said quietly. His eyes followed Arin as he moved from panel to panel, checking pressure valves, stabilizing power flows, and rerouting energy to shields that seemed ready to collapse at any moment. Most humans would have run. Most would panic. Arin shook his head slightly, still focused. "Strength is not always visible," he said. "Sometimes, it is the quiet hands that hold everything together. That's the kind of strength that lasts." He did not smile. He simply worked, calm as the hum of the ship's engines around them. The raiders regrouped, trying to breach the scrapyard's outer wall. Kraith knew they could not last long under Arin's control, but he also realized the human was not invincible. He moved closer, sword ready, prepared to intervene if necessary. Yet every time he reached for the hilt, he felt the sword's subtle guidance, reminding him that this was a lesson as much as a battle. The sword pulsed in rhythm with the human's calm energy, connecting both dragon and human in silent coordination. Explosions rocked the scrapyard, metal groaned, and sparks shot across the floor. Arin worked without hesitation, fixing damage in real time. A beam threatened to collapse. He rerouted power to magnetic stabilizers, holding it in place. A generator overloaded. He rerouted circuits to prevent a fire. Each task was small, but together they formed a fortress, unbroken and unstoppable. Kraith realized then that this was what he had never understood about humans. They were not physically strong like dragons, but their minds, their patience, their ability to see and repair what others missed, made them indispensable. One of the raiders finally breached a side door, charging forward with a weapon raised. Kraith roared, ready to strike, but Arin stepped forward, calm as ever. He flicked a switch and a trapdoor opened beneath the attacker, dropping him harmlessly into a padded pit hidden below the scrapyard floor. Kraith's jaw dropped. "You fight without fighting?" he said in awe. "Yes," Arin replied. "Sometimes the world needs hands that fix, not claws that destroy." He returned to the panels, adjusting voltage, monitoring the ship's integrity, and repairing damage that no one else would notice. Kraith stood silently beside him, learning. He realized that true strength was not about fame, victory, or fear. It was about doing what was necessary, even when no one watched, even when the world thought you were weak. The attackers grew frustrated, their numbers thinning, their confidence faltering. Kraith could have taken the sword and ended the fight in moments, but he did not. He watched Arin and understood the lesson. Strength without patience could destroy everything. Control, precision, and quiet resilience were worth more than raw power. By the time the last raider was dealt with, the scrapyard was still intact, though battered. Sparks flickered across walls, smoke rose from minor fires, and the sword's glow softened once again. Arin wiped his hands, not celebrating, not boasting. Kraith approached him, awe in his golden eyes. "You did all of this alone?" Arin shrugged faintly. "I did what was needed. That's all." His voice carried no pride, only the steady certainty of someone who had spent years working in the shadows. Kraith looked at him differently now. The legend of dragons, the wars, the swords, all of it mattered less than this. The quiet human who held everything together without applause, without recognition, had changed the course of the day and perhaps much more. For the first time in decades, Kraith felt humility and respect in equal measure. He knelt slightly, not in submission, but in acknowledgement of a strength he had never understood. You have taught me something I did not know I needed," he said softly. Aaron merely nodded, returning to check the ship's systems one final time. The scrapyard was calm again. The shadows shifted as if approving the quiet human's work. Kraith realized that this was not the end of the battle, nor the end of the journey. But he understood something vital. True strength could be forged without fire, without fury, without applause. It could exist in patience, skill, and quiet courage. And humans like Aaron carried it in ways that dragons, even legendary veterans, often overlooked. As night fell over the scrapyard, the sword pulsed gently in Kraith's hands. He looked at Aaron with a new understanding. "I thought I knew strength," he said quietly. "But I see now, it is more than power. It is this. What you do, what you hold together, what you repair in silence. That is strength the galaxy will never forget." Aaron simply smiled faintly, turning back to his workbench. The shadows were his home, his allies, and now his silent victory was clear. The sword's light glimmered, not in dominance but in trust. And in that quiet scrapyard, a dragon veteran learned that the human beside him was not only capable of surviving the galaxy's worst, but of shaping it, quietly, without applause and with strength that no war could break. The scrapyard lay quiet in the pale light of dawn. Sparks from last night's battle had faded, and the smoke had cleared, leaving only the smell of scorched metal and oil. Kraith Valerian held the sword carefully, its glow steady and warm in his hands. For the first time in years he felt calm, whole, and ready. The blade had tested him, awakened him, and now it awaited only his choice. Aaron Vox stood nearby, cleaning his tools, calm as ever. He had done his part. He had repaired what others would not, guided the sword's awakening, and held the scrapyard together when the world tried to tear it apart. He did not seek recognition. He never did. But he watched Kraith now with quiet satisfaction, knowing that the dragon's journey was nearly complete, and that the sword would finally find its rightful place. Kraith knelt before the sword, studying the etched lines and the faint pulse that matched his heartbeat. Memories of failure, of battles lost, of comrades abandoned, rose to the surface. For decades he had carried shame heavier than armor. But now, standing in the quiet of the scrapyard, he understood that the sword was never about power or pride. It had been waiting for him to see that true strength came not from conquest, but from patience, care, and the courage to change. He lifted the sword slowly, testing its balance. It did not resist. It did not hum angrily. Instead, it welcomed him, aligning perfectly with his grip. Kraith felt a surge of clarity, as if the sword was teaching him a new way to exist. He realized that this weapon, feared and legendary, had never belonged to him for destruction. It belonged to him because he had learned to respect responsibility, to honor patience, and to understand the quiet strength of humans like Aaron. Aaron approached, his eyes calm but alert. "It is ready," he said simply. "Not because you are perfect but because you are willing to learn, to change, and to wield it wisely." Kraith nodded, feeling the truth in the words. "I understand now," he said softly. He had thought he was returning to claim a sword. Instead he was returning to claim himself. The sword glimmered brighter, almost as if sensing the dragon's realization. Kraith raised it fully, letting its glow fill the scrapyard. The light did not blind him. It illuminated the lessons he had learned, the patience of the human beside him, the quiet victories that mattered more than fame or applause. He had been broken, haunted by failure, but the sword's acceptance reminded him that redemption was possible. A sudden sound echoed outside the scrapyard. A scavenger drone, likely from a passing patrol, had detected the light. Kraith instinctively tightened his grip, ready to defend. But Aaron raised a hand. "Let it come," he said calmly. "We have survived worse. Let it see the sword, and it will know the wrong place to challenge us." When the drone approached, it scanned the yard and instantly retreated. It did not dare test the defenses, nor the presence of the awakened sword. Kraith watched, realizing that power was not just in the weapon, but in the understanding of when to act and when to let patience guide you. Aaron's quiet work had made this possible. His hands, steady and skilled, had shaped more than machines. They had shaped destiny. Kraith turned to the human. "I owe you more than I can say," he said. Aaron waved his hand lightly. "You do not owe me. You only needed to see what you could become." The dragon veteran nodded, feeling gratitude deeper than words. He had faced death, chaos, and ruin, but it was a human's quiet strength that had guided him to this moment. He held the sword high and then lowered it respectfully, as if bowing to the lessons learned. It was no longer a symbol of war or fear, but of responsibility, trust, and growth. Kraith understood that the blade had waited for him not to dominate, but to prove that he could wield it with wisdom. And he had. The scrapyard seemed to breathe with relief. Shadows shifted in the corners, acknowledging the quiet human's triumph. The machines hummed softly, repaired and ready for the next challenge. Kraith sheathed the sword carefully. He did not feel the need to boast. The galaxy might never know what had happened here, but he knew the truth. He had reclaimed more than a weapon. He had reclaimed honor, purpose, and the possibility of a better path. Aran returned to his workbench as calm as ever. Kraith studied him, realizing that this human would never seek recognition, and yet he had changed the course of a dragon veteran's life. "You are remarkable," Kraith said softly. Aran shrugged. "I just do what is needed," he replied. "That is enough." For a long moment the two stood in silence, connected not by words, but by understanding. The sword pulsed gently in Kraith's hands, steady and alive, a reminder that strength could come in many forms. It did not belong to the loudest or the strongest, but to those who understood patience, care, and the quiet courage to act when it mattered most. Finally, Kraith nodded and turned toward the horizon. "The galaxy may never know," he said, "but I do. And that is enough." Aran smiled faintly, returning to the shadowed corner of the scrapyard where he thrived. He did not need glory, but he had ensured that the right choices were made, the right lessons learned, and the right strength awakened. The sword glimmered one last time, aligning with the dragon's heartbeat. Kraith lifted it once more, not in aggression but in honor. He had claimed it, yes, but more importantly he had claimed himself. And in the quiet scrapyard, under the soft light of a new day, the human mechanic and the dragon veteran stood together, knowing that true strength was measured not in fame or fear, but in patience, care, and the courage to rise when no one was watching. The galaxy outside could continue in chaos, war, and uncertainty. But here, in this small corner of the universe, the sword had chosen wisely, the dragon had learned, and the human had shaped the path without ever stepping into the light. And that, in its quiet way, changed everything.